Welcome back to Let's Both Play Resident Evil 5. I'm BurningDogFace.
And I'm Ronin Drake.
And today, we're going to be learning about Sheva Alomar. Listed within this file is a general background information overview of BSAA agent Sheva Alomar, as pieced together from various sources. The information listed here... Could have asked, yeah. The information listed here is neither complete, nor should it be used as a psychological analysis of the subject. Sheva Alomar was born into an impoverished family situation in a small factory town situated in Africa. Not very specific. This particular town being home to Umbrella Plant 57. As with most factory towns, the plant was the lifeblood of the town, bringing in much-needed revenue and steady employment for its populace. I think that's the wrong spelling for populace, but whatever. Almost 80% of the town's adult population is employed at the factory in some facility, including Sheva's parents. While the pay was low by most nations' standards, it provided a steady income for the townspeople and a happy childhood for Sheva. This happiness was short-lived, however. While only 8 years old, Sheva's peaceful life was brought to an abrupt end by the sound of sirens erupting from the factory. As the sirens pierced the air, an ominous plume of black smoke poured out of the factory. Even as a child, Sheva knew something was terribly wrong. With dread in her heart, she ran towards the factory. Arriving at the factory, she soon discovered the entrance blocked. In place of the kind old man who used to stand guard at the entrance, strange adults in protective suits were everywhere, their faces hidden by masks. Sheva could not understand what was happening. I realized years later that they were wearing anti-biohazard protective gear. They were part of Umbrella's special forces. She may not have understood the muffled voices emanating from beneath those masks at the time, but the assault rifles they leveled at her more than made their intentions understood. The country is not a very stable place to begin with, and near her town resided members of a large anti-government guerrilla army. Although only a child, Sheva knew all too well the violence that often accompanied those with guns. The adults in the village that remained were promptly executed by these gunmen.
Charming.
Sheva was spared the same fate thanks to the vigilance of a neighbor who was able to get her back to her parents' home unaided. Or unnoticed, sorry. Thus began the longest night of Sheva's life. Crippled by fear, she could only wait and pray for her parents' return. The night passed and a new day dawned, but still they did not return. As night on another day fell, she sensed a presence outside her home. Unable to contain her relief and joy, she ran to the door to greet her parents. As she swung the door open, crying aloud with joy, she was soon met with disappointment and confusion. For at the door were not her parents rushing to embrace her, but her uncle, with a look of shock and horror painted upon his face. His words crushed any hope she had left. "Your parents are dead. There was an accident at the factory." Taking anything of value... What?
He doesn't sugarcoat things, does he?
No, not really. Yeah, that's pretty blunt. It's in direct quotes, too.
Sorry, kid, parents are dead. You're coming with me.
Taking anything of value left in the house, her uncle then took Sheva to live with his family, taking her away from the only home she had ever known. Her life with her uncle would be brief. Not only was her uncle's family extremely poor, but he also had 7 children of his own to care for. Even though Sheva was a blood relative, he probably never would have come for her if he hadn't thought he would receive financial compensation from the factory. Charming guy. That compensation never came. Umbrella never gave out any payments, and soon her aunt and uncle were unable to feed her. Life was hell for Sheva. Not only was she on the verge of starvation, she yearned to be with her parents again. In her grief, she became fixated on the notion that they were still alive. As the days passed, this belief grew so strong, to the point where she could think of nothing else. She knew she had to find them. The grammar there is a bit odd, but okay. So one night, as the moon bathed the savannah in silver, Sheva ran away from her uncle's house and headed back to her hometown to the end of the life that was stolen from her. The thought of her parents drove her on, but the expansive savannah is a harsh environment for one so young and small. During her second night, she began to feel the effects of malnutrition. Unable to find food, Sheva soon collapsed. A night in the savannah is not a quiet affair. The sounds of animals plodding along, beasts howling at the moon, insects chirping and buzzing about, and the dry wind soughing through the grass. Is that a word?
Sowing?
S-O-U-G-H-I-N-G.
It's not what I'm familiar with.
Sheva considered them all with wonder. She had grown up in a town and was unaccustomed to her new surroundings. Through the cacophony of strange noises, Sheva picked up a sound that was quite familiar to her. She heard the low rumbling of an engine and the sound of tires crackling over the dirt. A truck pulled up next to Sheva, and a stranger got out of the passenger side and spoke to her. If she replied to him or not, she couldn't recall, but the man picked her up and placed her in the bed of the truck. The man that found Sheva was an anti-government guerrilla fighter. He provided her with food, shelter, and a place to call home. Unfortunately for Sheva, this good turn is accompanied by some bad news. She was told that the incident at the Umbrella factory was not an accident, that the factory manufactured bioweapons and Umbrella was carrying out the final test on one of its newest weapons at the dilapidated factory. The regular employees who worked there were unaware of what Umbrella was actually creating, and they paid for it with their lives, including Sheva's mother and father. After concluding the test, Umbrella took measures to conceal the entire affair. With the assistance of the government's army, they destroyed the factory along with the entire town, effectively wiping the town Sheva had called home off the map. Damn. At this news, Sheva was filled with rage. She hated Umbrella and blamed them for her parents' deaths, and she hated the government for just rolling over at Umbrella's behest. It was at this moment she decided to join the guerrillas in their fight against the government. Sheva started out by doing laundry, cooking meals, and taking care of other chores. After only a few years with the guerrillas, she was given her first gun. She doesn't like to talk about her time with the guerrillas. Perhaps the memories are too painful, or maybe she's too ashamed of what she did there. One of her main duties of the guerrillas is to go into town and purchase supplies for the group. For 7 long years, Sheva stayed with the guerrillas. By this time she was a teenager and had spent most of her known life with the guerrillas. Perhaps due to her age, when she went into the townspeople never suspected her of being a guerrilla fighter. It could be for this very reason that she was the one they sent. It was on one of these occasions, while she was in town, that a man approached her. He looked like a local, but spoke with a strange foreign accent. Handing her a piece of paper and speaking in a hurried voice, he stated, "Read this. If you believe what it says, come to the church in the back alley in 2 hours." After speaking these words, he disappeared into the crowd as quickly as he had appeared. Sheva turned the paper over in her hand, and her eyes were drawn to one word: Umbrella. It was the same pharmaceutical company whose selfish aims took her parents from her. If that incident had never happened, perhaps her life would have been different. The message on the paper said that the guerrillas are planning on using a bioweapons to conduct a large-scale terrorist attack that would overthrow the government. Umbrella was going to make a deal with the guerrillas to provide them with the bioweapons. The man wanted Sheva's help in stopping the deal from going through. Man, she did not have it easy.
No.
At first, Sheva thought it was a government trap, but deep down she knew the note spoke the truth. When asked how she knew, she had this to say: "My government was strongly influenced by France, and many government officials spoke in a French patois." Patois? I don't know how you say that. But this man was different. I couldn't place his accent at the time, but somehow I knew I could trust him. Sheva followed her instincts. She went to the church and met 2 men there. One of them had given her the note earlier. The other wore a suit with no tie, and said that he was from the U.S. government. What the man in the suit wanted seemed straightforward enough: the apprehension of the representative from Umbrella. From what he said, this particular person held the key to causing an irreparable blow to Umbrella. But in order to arrest him, they needed Sheva's help. As long as they got their man, they wouldn't do anything to her or her fellow guerrillas. Even if they did not succeed in arresting the man in question, they promised not to turn her or her companions over to the authorities. The man in the suit's offer seemed credible. But could she betray those who had been like a family to her? The man seemed to understand Sheva's apprehension, so he asked her one simple question: "Don't you want to see Umbrella punished for what they've done?" Sheva quickly nodded her head. "That's why we selected you. But if you want to help us fight Umbrella, then you are going to have to leave your so-called friends. And then what? What's in it for me? Look around. You know these guerrillas you are with aren't doing this for some greater good. They'll do anything to topple the government, including things you know are wrong. Help us so you can finally do some good for the people of your country. And what makes you think a 15-year-old girl can help? Someday you'll learn that age matters very little. A person's life is not defined by age, but by the choices they make. You have the chance to fight for something here that goes beyond just you, something that affects the entire world. Can you really walk away when so much is at stake? Sheva would never forget these words. 3 days later, the Special Forces team arrived at the location where the deal was taking place. Sheva had left the door to the building unlocked, and she wore a wire so the team on standby could hear what was taking place. The operation was a success. The target from Umbrella was quickly apprehended and taken away. Sheva and the guerrillas were taken to the American consulate, there to be released just 2 days later, with no charges pressed, just as promised. Recognizing Sheva's abilities, or perhaps moved by pity, the man in the suit offered Sheva the chance to start life anew in America. With nothing left in Africa for her, Sheva decided to take him up on his offer. Shortly after arriving in America, Sheva's high intelligence and drive quickly became apparent. She surpassed any and all expectations, even learning English to a native level in a mere 6 months. Within 2 years of arriving in the U.S., she had enrolled at a university. After graduating with high honors from her university, her legal guardian, the man in the suit, suggested that she join the newly formed BSAA to help others as she had been helped. Umbrella had already been dismantled many years prior, but Sheva had not let go of her hatred towards them, and all others like them. After completing basic training, she was assigned to the unit led by Josh Stone. There, she trained with his unit for 8 months, learning everything she would need to know to survive in the field. After the completion of her training, she was handpicked to become a BSAA agent. She is currently involved in operations throughout the world. And because his file isn't very long, we're also going to learn about Ricardo Irving.
Given where it is in the timeline, do you suppose that Umbrella closed things up in Sheva's village with a variant on Mr. X?
Oh, jeez. I hadn't even thought of that.
I mean, that's his whole thing in 2, right? That he's just getting rid of all the witnesses.
Yeah, they did the same thing with the Nemesis in RE3.
Okay, so that seems to be their... If it's around the same time, they probably had some version of that going through Africa.
Yeah. We were going to have Ronin read the files today, but it turns out he didn't unlock these files. We think it's because of that one level where he got inexplicably kicked and had to rejoin.
Boo.
Ricardo Irving. According to official records, Ricardo Irving is overseer of the oil refinery owned by Tricell Africa Division's Resource Development Department. Crude and arrogant, he possesses an insatiable desire for the accumulation of wealth. It is these traits, along with his unique resourcefulness, that have most likely made him Tricell's ideal agent in dealings with selling BOWs to black market individuals. What a charming... right from the very beginning.
Yeah. The guy was just super greedy and wants all the money he can get.
Page 2. The money gained from these dealings is then invested by Tricell Africa back into their bioweapons research and development. The demonstration of those weapons for clients... What? The demonstration of those weapons for clients act as operational tests. Given the degree of Irving's involvement, it is believed that he is one of only a handful of people that know the full extent of Tricell's bioweapons business. Irving's activities and their connection to Tricell, however, have been carefully kept under wraps. Adding to the misdirection is the fact that he is officially employed at the Resource Development Division, and not the Pharmaceutical Division that sponsors the BSAA. Tricell is a conglomerate comprised of shipping, natural resources development, and pharmaceuticals.
I was going to ask what a pharmaceutical company was doing, apparently in charge of an oil rig.
I guess that's what the name means, huh? There's the 3 divisions. Each division runs on its own capital, and as such, could all be considered separate entities under one parent company. Yeah, that would do it. Also of note are the divisions that exist between each of Tricell's branch offices. When the BSAA learned of Irving's latest deal, they viewed it as illicit activity conducted on his own and without support from Tricell. BSAA's mission, therefore, was not to fight biological weapons, but to apprehend a smuggler involved in an illicit deal. Irving was able to exploit that misconception to the fullest. Irving was informed of the BSAA's mission, and changed the location of the deal to a mine outside of the Kijuju Autonomous Zone, KAZ. When a BSAA team arrived at what they thought was the deal's location inside the KAZ, they walked into a trap. Before the team even arrived, the improved version of Las Plagas was released upon the populace of the town, transforming most of them into Majini. This intel was acquired by Alpha Team, and later confirmed by the data recovered by the backup team, Chris Redfield and Sheva Alomar, prior to Irving's deal. It appears that a sample of the Ouroboros virus was also released upon Alpha Team's arrival, and was responsible for the termination of Dan Duchant's team. So the snake dude?
Maybe?
Huh. Irving did not take into account that the Ouroboros would be engaged and defeated by Agents Redfield and Alomar, nor that a hard disk and its data would be seized. The data obtained from the hard disk allowed the two agents to proceed to the actual location of Irving's transaction, the mine. When confronted with the reality that his plan had failed, Irving was forced to take the following actions. First, he contacted his partners in the transaction and requested to delay the deal, after which point he went to the mine to retrieve any documents and materials relevant to the transaction. It was at this point that Redfield and Alomar found him. However, it was obvious that he had a backup plan for just such a contingency. Irving escaped thanks to the help of a hooded figure he had on standby. The two agents were left to deal with Popo Karimu, a bat-based BOW, that was originally intended to be used in the transaction. Oops. Too far. I went too far ahead. It is thought that Irving released this BOW on the agents in retaliation for disrupting the transaction and not to aid in his escape. Yeah, that sounds about right. He seems the sort of guy to do that. It was becoming apparent by this point that Irving's mental stability was in question. No shit. Whether his irrational behavior was brought on by the interference of the agents, or if the increased stress only brought out his true tendencies, is unknown. Irving's situation, however, would digress even further. After escaping from the mine, he was soon discovered by Captain Josh Stone's Delta team inside the KAZ. In order to escape, Irving unleashed Indesu, confirmed to be based on the El Gigante BOW used in Europe. The frustration of losing two large, valuable BOWs in such a short succession must have been keenly felt by the avaricious Irving. That's a good word, avaricious. After reaching the conclusion that there was nothing more he could do, Irving plotted to escape with his accumulated wealth, but he was soon overtaken by the hooded figure, who provided him a vial containing Las Plagas. This was to be his punishment for failure. He was to administer this on himself in order to fight the two agents. The vial contained a Las Plagas variant known as a control plaga. According to BSAA intel, the use of the control plaga has been documented by Leon S. Kennedy in Europe. The control plaga differs from the common form in that it does not take over a host's rational thought process. Another difference being that it causes extreme transformations to the host. As such, control plaga hosts must resign themselves to never being able to live as a normal human again. In a last-ditch effort, Irving detonated the oil refinery, but unfortunately for him the refinery was virtually dry at the time, thus limiting the size of the explosion. His hope was that he could destroy all incriminating evidence and kill Agents Redfield and Alomar, so he would not have to resort to using the control plaga. Irving was left with no choice but to administer the injection to himself, at which point he underwent an immense and rapid transformation. But even the power he gained from that transformation did not avail him, and he met his end at the hands of the two agents. Well, I'm BurningDogFace.
I'm Ronin Drake.
And we'll see you in the next episode of Let's Both Play Resident Evil 5. Later!